Hey folks, Stacy at the Battle Axe channel here. I'm just coming to you with a little video today. I wanted to chat with you about the big hoopla, right? The big controversy over Joe Rogan and his podcast, and how this bombardment of baby boomers are trying to cancel him out, right? It's kind of ironic that the baby boomers now, these leftist, right, these leftist hippies from the 60s and 70s who made millions of dollars off the American people now are joining with the quote woke generation that wants to cancel out anything that offends them. And I find it very ironic that these two generations are coming together in this cancel culture to just silence dissent and silence voices. So with that said, guys, for those of you that don't know who Joe Rogan is, and I apologize for my camera bouncing around here. I'm on the back roads. I'm on a little ride here. Hopefully that I can get that fixed when I'm done. But guys, Joe Rogan started out in comedy in the 80s and 90s. He was into martial arts, Taekwondo, and he went to MMA. He is a broadcaster. He's actually one of the talking voices, the commentators for MMA. He's been very outspoken. One of the reasons I like him is he's been very outspoken about this nonsense of males being able to compete in female sports. I am a prior athlete, female, obviously, athlete. I threw shot put, discus, javelin, and I was in powerlifting and bodylifting through high school and in my early 20s. I started out throwing shot put and discus in 3rd grade, and from that point on, I went a long ways. I went to state, regional, and national championships. I worked my ears off from 3rd grade on through high school, lifting weights, training to do and get as far as I did, all in the hopes to get a college scholarship, and then I blew out my ankle. And it happened to be the ankle that I pivot on to spin, and that it was never the same again. So folks, Joe Rogan has been very outspoken about biological males competing in female sports. He is very open and blatant about the abuse and the threat that it is to women's livelihood, stealing scholarships, titles, money, all this stuff out from under women. You know, we fought for years and years and years to gain what we've built as women, and to have men, delusional men, come in and take it. Joe has been outspoken about stopping this nonsense. And that's one of the reasons I do respect him. He's not afraid to speak the truth when everybody else says that, that it's not truth, that it's reality. But in recent years, so Joe, he was in comedy, he was in martial arts and MMA. And in the last, I would say 3 to 5 years, he started this podcast, and he is very open about the fact that he didn't plan it to be as big as it was. He just decided to do some audio on some conversations with some folks that he knew, and it just became this huge success. The guy sits down across from the table from multiple types of people in multiple expertise and backgrounds, whether that's science, whether that's manufacturing, whether it's politics, doesn't matter. He talks to both sides of the aisle, dissenting people. He's kind of there looking for information, and he just lets people talk. He just has a conversation, and he does not put a muzzle over them when they're talking. So folks, this podcast has grown to the point on Spotify and other platforms that he started on YouTube, and he actually went to Spotify, and it exploded. Millions upon millions upon millions of people listen to Joe Rogan every day because he allows free speech and different ideas. He allows the dissenting voices to speak their expertise and let you decide what is best for you and yours. But see, guys, these baby boomers Neil Young and Joni Mitchell and all these people who think that they are something in today's world. For me, they're meanies. These old hippies, right? These leftist hippies that fought against war, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That is a great thing. But they think they're entitled to silence Joe Rogan and his show because they don't agree with what he's talking about. So they are trying to get as many singer-songwriters and other, entertainment type people to get off the Spotify platform to force Spotify to get Joe Rogan off. And I find it very ironic that the very generation that quote-unquote fought for freedom, right, fought for free speech, that, gathered in the 60s and the 70s protesting, the Vietnam War and, equality for black African Americans, which is fantastic. I find it very odd that these are the very people now trying to join with this quote-unquote woke culture to silence anybody who questions government. It's very odd. It's like it's come full circle, right? This generation, the baby boomer generation, started out, a lot of those hippies that protested and stuff like that, started out not trusting the government and hating everything it represented, right? The whole hippie culture was a counterculture in protest against the status quo. And now they're joining with the modern millennial woke morons that hate free speech, and they are fighting to anybody that questions government and the government narrative. It's just amazing to me. Now, one of the things I have to say, and I'm just going to say this, it's not all baby boomers, so don't get all offended when you hear this. But in my experience personally, the baby boomer generation is the most selfish generation that has been for 100 years. Their parents, the greatest generation, the World War II vets, the ones who fought World War II, who came out of the Depression, who were, pardon my language, badass people, man. You didn't mess with the greatest generation. They came as children through the Depression. They fought and they scraped for every little piece of food on their plate to become adults, to have to go fight in World War II, to get out of World War II. In that generation, all they wanted was to have a little white house with a picket fence with 2-3 bedrooms, and they wanted to raise their families, right? And they wanted to have 3 square meals on the table. But the baby boomer generation that they bore took it a step further than that. They were the ones that this debt system thrived under, grew under, to the behemoth that we have today. They were the ones that wanted the bigger houses, the boats, the campers, the big vacations, and they thought they were owed it, right? And I'm not saying that they didn't work hard, but this is the generation that today, very many of them, they don't give a crap about their kids or their grandkids and leaving an inheritance. I personally know many of them who have worked and either paid off their homes or their farms or whatever just to sell it back to the stinking government so they can go on more vacations instead of leaving that as an inheritance to their kids. I personally, my mom and dad, and my mom, this is how my mom would say, well, we didn't have a pot to piss in. They didn't have a pot to piss in, right? Nothing was handed to them, which is actually, not true. Their parents, especially my dad's parents, whenever they needed money, gave them money. They gave willfully, freely, all the time. But my parents never saved. They had to have the boat when they shouldn't have had the boat. They had to have the camper when they didn't. They were very low income. And then my dad would hurt his back and wouldn't be able to work, but yet I had all these expenses. And me, my sister, and brother, we don't have an inheritance. There's nothing there. This is the generation that squanders their children's inheritance. And I'm not saying it's all of them, but that is kind of the mentality that we earn this is ours, right? And my generation, I'm Generation X, All I want to do is build a farmstead and build a heritage for my children so that I could leave them in a more comfortable and have something that we didn't have growing up. Even at one point, my parents, get this, guys, my parents, after my great-grandparents died, had the opportunity to have the original family homestead, now they wouldn't have gotten the woods with it, but they would have had approximately 50 or 60 acres with the barn and a little acreage of woods in the back. And they could have gotten it for like $50,000 to $53,000. Just an insane, and even at that time was a very, very, unheard of low amount for that type of acreage. My parents, just 2 years prior, to the death of my grandparents, had bought a house in a small little town, and it was, it wasn't anything fancy or anything, and they refused to take the home of their, of the great grandparents. My mom didn't want to live out in the country, which wasn't that far. It was only like 2-3 miles away from the town they were living in anyways, but literally allowed somebody else to buy what was their inheritance because they just rejected it. This idea that I don't want to live there, I don't want it, where in turn, like the Bible states, God hated Esau because he sold his inheritance for a bowl of porridge, a bowl of soup. And I have taught my children that you should fight for your inheritance. And parents should want to freely give an inheritance, right? But that my parents just let that go. And then my grandparents ended up, and along with my grandmother's aunts and uncles, ended up selling it for $53,000 to some friends and farmers, and it went out of the family. To me, that's tragic. But that's kind of the mentality of the generation, right? It's me, myself, and we're going to have what we want. And Neil Young and Joni Mitchell in this, they're showing it. They're showing their true colors, trying to discredit, and silence free speech on these platforms, getting Joe Rogan kicked off of Spotify. I find it abhorrent. I find it evil. I find these people, hope these people lose millions. I hope they're the ones kicked off. I hope it backfires because, we don't have such a thing as a free market. That's nonsense. We don't have that anymore. But if you believe there is a semblance of a free market left in this kind of media, social media area, Joni Mitchell and Neil Young and anybody coming out against Joe Rogan trying to get him kicked off that platform, they should be shut down. Nobody should be downloading, uploading, paying for their music. They should lose everything because they are the tyrants. They are right now acting as those good little Germans, just following the government orders, right? And they are the ones that are pushing government can never be wrong. Guys, in my years of studying history, politics, working in agriculture, I have no love for government. And some of you folks, you Christians out there are going to say, oh, but Paul says this and Paul says that about government, The fact of the matter is Paul is not Jesus Christ. Paul is not Moses. Paul is not God. He didn't write the 10 Commandments. And much of what Paul said was his opinion and was not biblical fact or law, period. I am not a Paulian. I am a Christian. And if you read the Bible and you go back as far as you can, you will realize it was not God's plans to impose a government on his people. It was not God's plans to impose a king over his people. It was the people who wanted the easy path and people to make decisions for them that begged God to bring a king. God the Father, according to Scripture, did not want that. He had a system of freedom, of absolute liberty within the context, within the confines of the 10 Commandments. thou shalt not commit murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal. As long as you were within those boundaries, you could do whatever the heck you wanted. He allowed certain people to rise up as judges, as elders in the community. He said if somebody commits an offense, if somebody commits a crime, there has to be 2 or 3 witnesses. So if a gentleman was accused of murder, there had to be 2 or 3 witnesses, or that man was not sentenced to death. If a man raped another man's wife, there had to be witnesses. It couldn't be just on the words of either the woman or, whoever was accusing. It was a very simplistic system. There was no need for prisons. There was no need for jails, because if there was 2 or 3 witnesses, you had raped, murdered, or what have you, you were put to death, and rightfully so. If you stole, if you were a thief and you stole from people, and this is the misconception that many have about the Bible, and they say the Bible promotes slavery. It does not promote slavery. But if you were a thief and you stole from somebody, and there was 2 or 3 witnesses that came forth and said that yes, you stole, you were considered an indentured servant, or you were put into slavehood by the person you stole from until you paid back 7-fold what you took. I think it's a pretty fair way of moving things. But guys, for you Christians out there saying, any of us believers that talk against government, we're out of line because of Romans 3, this and that scripture is so deceptive. I am not a Paulian. I reject that teaching wholeheartedly. It is not scriptural. There's not 2 or 3 witnesses at any other part of the Bible that even goes along with what Paul was saying there. So I just want to stop you right there, on that line of thinking. So when I say, this generation, these baby boomers, it blows my mind how they fought so hard against the government narrative at one time, and what they were doing, sending young boys off to war to die for a cause that not many people believed in. And if they did, they didn't want. It blows my mind that we've come full circle, and the baby boomers are now fighting to shut down free speech and shut down free thought. Guys, I encourage you, after you get off of watching my video, to go to Spotify. Go to Spotify. It's free. And follow Joe Rogan. Even if you don't listen to all of his videos, I don't listen to all of them either. I listen to the ones that I see with content and value that I can gain from. Just blow up his followership and support him, because he's fighting for free speech. Show Spotify that we care more about free speech than what these baby boomers think is right, and that we won't support these platforms that silence people. We're about free speech here. So go ahead and do that. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I know I offended anybody, but you know what? I really don't care. My life experience, I'm 44. I've seen things, and I'm just at this place where I'm not afraid to say it anymore. I'm just not. People need to wake up. And I'm not talking about the woke culture. They're not woke. They're actually the complete opposite of woke. This woke culture, this cancel culture, are nothing more than good little German totalitarian pigs that should, if anybody, they have a right to say what they're going to say. They have the free speech to do what they're going to do. But the free market, if one existed, should silence them. Everybody should opt out of whatever platforms they're on. Do not do anything that would cause them to gain more money or access to money after, boycott them. See, that's what we can do. We can boycott. That's where our power. I just made a video about that a little bit ago. The greatest thing we can do is boycott our time, talent, and money. Boycott. And that's what the true market is. The true market is either supporting what you agree with, what you like, or it's boycotting. It's not partaking. And so when these people like Neil Young and that stuff come up, don't listen to them anymore. Don't listen to their music. Boycott them. Anybody who comes up in anti-free speech, anti-Second Amendment, anti-free choice to take the snake bite or not, boycott them. We shut them down by not participating in their nonsense. That's what we do. So guys, this is Stacy at the Battle Axe channel. I hope you enjoyed this little conversation. I need to go in and give my grandson a kiss now because he's just the sweetest little guy in the world. And you guys have a fantastic day. Bye.